Rob Rinder.
Clever,
compassionate,
questioning,
consultative,
convincing,
convicted. Rob Rinder. Malud, Malloud, Malive. Rob Rinder and Drive on TalkRadio.
Good afternoon, it is 6:03. You're listening to me, Rob Rinder, on Drive at TalkRadio, the home of common sense and decent British values. It's so nice to be here today as we meander over our little pond, also known as the Atlantic, stateside with our own guest. He is our White House correspondent at Real Political News, but also our expert on that side of the pond. We like to know him as Prof JC, but he is John Christopher Buett. There's a lot to get through, Prof JC. It is always a gift and privilege to hear from you. Now, we've been talking a lot about energy on the show today, and as it turns out, it seems that, I keep calling him Professor, I don't know why, it's because of you, I reckon, that President Biden is to release US oil to ease gas prices. Now, there are great reserves of oil in America. Why has it taken so long, Prof. JC?
Well, I guess he waited till push came to shove.
Right.
And he wanted to say how the Europeans were going to do. And he's releasing 180 million barrels from the U.S. Strategic Oil Reserve to lower gas prices. When you see the gas prices now are a little above $4 a gallon, which is not a heck of a lot when you consider what it's like in Sweden or in the UK or Denmark. Remember, he is looking toward November. He needs to hold on to the House and Senate. Right. And if people pull up to the gas pump and they say to their wives, or the wife says to the husband, I can't believe I just spent $76 to fill this tank. Right. How are we going to have a summer? Where are we going to drive? He knows that. He was aware of that. He's releasing 1 million barrels a day. And he would like the Europeans, his allies, his comrades in arms, so to speak, to promise to do the same. So they can end Putin's horror. And gas prices, they went up $1 over the last month. And it's tough, like you have it in UK.
Can we talk about the strategic gas reserve or energy reserve that you're talking about in America? You know, there's a lot of chat on the right and on the left that there is energy. Now, whether that means drilling in ANWR or whether that means fracking, the reality is that there is great potential that United States have to produce not necessarily fully its own energy supply, but a great deal more of its own, and relying less on the autocratic regimes in Saudi Arabia, which is funding the horror in Yemen, and most especially Putin, who's funding the horror in Ukraine. So why isn't that more bipartisan?
Well, it would be, but you need the Republicans to vote on this in the legislature as well. And unless it's an executive order, the U.S. is the largest producer of natural gas already. Yeah. And we can do it for ourselves, but we have to, the Congress has to agree on it. And that's why he's doing it incrementally. I mean, we'd all like to see more green energy. Sure. We'd all like to see wind perhaps as well. And Joe Biden is for that. But, you know, Rob, this takes a long time, as you know. So this is what we're doing. We're releasing 180 million barrels, and we may have to do more.
You know, I remember, we changed topics now because we've started the show talking about corporate greed because, you know, the price of gas and oil is not just about tax and the money the government takes, but also the responsibility the oil companies have. Now, many of them will tell you, not necessarily convincingly, that that money all gets plowed back into investment in green energy. Some of it undoubtedly does, and when that happens, we applaud it because ultimately that's good for everybody in the long run. But a lot of it gets, frankly, put into the pocket of dividend holders and shareholders, right? It's bottom line, in other words. It's an example of corporate greed. A lot of these companies have made massive profits as the world and the consumer is suffering the most. What can government do to really redress that as a problem? It can't just be an answer in tax, right?
Well, look, this country is founded on John D. Rockefeller, and he is the oil man, the old man, and we have always had corporate greed. We've always tried to, as Biden. I watched his press briefing about an hour ago, and he said he's going to make the corporations responsible. He says, you know how he says, pay your fair share.
Pay your fair share.
He wants you to pay your fair share. But when they are supporting through lobbyists and through PACs, the individuals who are getting elected, you know this, Rob. You know what's gone on with the Tories. I won't get involved in Labor or the Dems, but you take money, you owe it. You owe someone. You can't fight the hand that feeds you, and it goes right into legislation, and that's where the consumer gets it.
Well, I have to tell you, when you explain lobbying in America, it is, I have to tell you, a very different cultural kettle of fish in America than it is here. I mean, I listen to friends that work for senators and so on and so forth, and some of the money in various ways, for example, that the drug companies spend on getting access to politicians that then are able to influence legislation in their favor, and the food companies and the energy companies to, for example, reduce the amount of share of tax they have to spend, really does kind of violence to our democracy, doesn't it? And you just used the language that I've been using throughout the show. It undermines that sort of fundamental sense that we all share, regardless of our political complexion, of fairness, right?
Yes. I came to Washington in 1993 to work on what was called Hillary's Healthcare That's Always There project.
Right.
I was basically the mouthpiece of all of this. I worked with her and her staff to make sure that we got healthcare for people. We got a little bit incrementally, but what really was the problem was Big Pharma shut us down. They put ads, they had the money to put ads on, and it wasn't until Barack Obama came along with his affordable healthcare that we really got anything. Except for some portability, and that will always be a price that the Americans have to pay. And our healthcare system, no matter what you think, is not very good. And either you're indigent and you get help, or you're old and you get Medicare. But in the meantime, you're on your own, pal.
Well, Prof. JC, there are much stricter laws about the ways in which corporate interests can influence individual MPs and how they have to disclose any connections they have than there is and are in America. If you were president or some sort of powerful senator on the relevant committee, or let's say there was one party that had meaningful control over Congress, what legislation would you enact to stop or at least prevent corporate interests from framing legislation in their favor and really affecting the most vulnerable, which is the average American, or in this case, the average British person?
Yes, disclosing who your benefactors are, who your investors are, who your donors are. And Nancy Pelosi's getting pilloried for that because this is what she wants, and she wants it to be brought up in the House. And I think it should be part of the disclosure and the transparency, because look, if everyone's on the take, everyone gets screwed. Excuse my vulgarity.
I remember somebody using this phrase, if you come out of politics richer than when you went in, you are corrupt. I have to say, Prof. JC, looking across the Senate and Congress in general, people with their faces in the trough exist on both sides of that political aisle, right?
Yes, and you should stop your stock trading. This is what they're doing. They're buying stocks and they're trading, and you don't think they get any, you're an attorney,
Sure.
You're a judge. You don't think they get any information beforehand? A little, as you would say, insider trading? I don't know if we've got that in the UK, but we sure have it here.
Doesn't that do real violence or really undermine public trust in democracy? There's all these other conspiracy theories, but at its heart, it's what people are talking about when they see politicians on the take in that way, or not representing the interests of their constituents, instead representing corporate interests. That, if you were to make a list at the top of that pyramid, that would be a really primary thing that could be changed to engender a more trusting relationship with those who legislate on our behalf. Would you agree?
And as I try to teach my students, keep a positive attitude. People get a very negative point of view of politicians for exactly that reason. They're all corrupt. What the heck? I'm not voting at all. I'll stay home. They're all the same. The Republicans, Democrats, they're all a bunch of crooks. You hear this all the time. And that's why Trump came along, supposedly, who's going to save everyone on his white horse. And he was the non-corrupt guy. Boy, were they wrong about him. But that's what people get turned off about politics. Young people don't want to join. They don't want to get involved. And that's really where the crime happens. That's where the sin for real democracy. It's also expensive to run for public office. So you need some dough. And we tried to get public financing of candidates. And that bill didn't pass. We pay billions of dollars, billions for K Street support and for lobbyists, et cetera, to go up to the House and the Senate and sit there and wait till they get to an assistant to come out and say, oh, Congressman so-and-so, we'll see you next Thursday. Will you wait? And write so they can write. And they'll actually write the legislation for them, Rob.
Wow.
I've seen that. They'll actually
I have to tell
stuff.
you, sometimes I remember a friend of mine that worked in the British Embassy over in America, and she said to me, if you think this is the same country just because they speak the same language, you're gravely mistaken. Don't approach it in that way. We have many structural problems, but I got to tell you, that ain't one of them. Just very quickly, lastly, but definitely not leastly, do you think the rest of the world might be a beneficiary of I did it again. President Biden releasing U.S. oil. Is any of that going to benefit the rest of the world?
We are a global economy, Rob. You know that. What benefits us will benefit all. I think we're all in this together, as they say. And I think releasing that will help. Maybe releasing more, involving the Europeans to help them get that concept, at least in their heads, so they'll do it. It takes time. This is going to be a struggle. But if anybody can motivate us, it's Vladimir Putin. And he wants to squeeze Putin. In the meantime, he's squeezing off the oil to our allies.
Right. Well, he's certainly had the effect of galvanizing the West. There he is, as ever, Prof. JC Clear. Go back and have a listen. I have to tell you, when you think about the corporate interests in America, it makes us look like the most civilized democracy of the world. Blimmin' heck. This is Robert Rinder at Drive on Talk Radio. With Plan for Jobs. Join the skills revolution and be ready to make your best move to grow your business. Visit www.gov.uk/skills support. This is Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world